And we'll pick up on that last point with Sophie Mokoena in a second. But the president is there despite an explosion that tore through a street in the city's historic Latin Quarter just a few hours before the event kicks off. International editor Sophie Mokoena is with me now. Sophie, as you've explained in the package there, this is a high-level financing meeting for very focused projects around the world. What is in it for the African continent?
Well, you know that post-COVID-19, the continent is trying to rebuild, particularly poorer countries. And therefore, you need money, you need resources. IMF and World Bank were meant, when they were launched, to do just that. But when you look at the mandate of these institutions, it's outdated. And that's exactly what the Secretary General said of the UN, that the mandate is outdated. I remember very well when President William Ruto was in the country addressing the Pan-African Parliament. He also complained about the same issue. And also when we were in Kenya recently during the Habitat Conference, that was the main issue, that you have to rebuild, you have to build new cities, you have to bring infrastructure, you have to change the lives of people around the world. But these institutions, they are not assisting, because when you check in terms of the transaction, when you pay the loans, you have to pay a lot of money that you can't even afford. Some of the charges, they exceed even GDPs of other countries. And therefore, it's a problem. You look at a country like Malawi and Zambia, for example.
So, I mean, Guterres said, you know, the IMF seems to benefit rich countries more than it does poor countries. And insofar as the World Bank is concerned, we saw the COVID-19 responses really show, in a sense, you know, where their priorities lie. Let's circle back then to these projects. Cyril Ramaphosa, our president, mentioned a couple of our intentions vis-a-vis these talks. Talk to us about some of the other African countries represented. You have Nigeria, you've got Egypt, Comoros, Mauritius, and others there as well.
Yes, Senegal, and you also have Kenya. And President William Ruto of Kenya participated during the panel discussion around the transformation of these institutions. And you are correct. In terms of South Africa, the president was quite clear. We know that he has pointed out on many occasions that he doesn't sleep at night because of there are no jobs, the economy is not doing well, we have challenges of electricity. And I think this was a platform for him to really tell the world the challenges South Africa is facing. And when you look at the $8.5 billion grant or loans that have been extended to South Africa after the COP26, you find that 80% you have to pay back, and you look at interest, they are too high. And that is why he wants that agreement or that assistance to be restructured so that majority or a chunk of that money is grants. And therefore, he was really crying, talking about South Africa's just energy transition. You have to finance this just energy transition. We need a lot of money. He made a similar call at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, and now going to United Arab Emirates, Dubai, COP28. We still having same problems. There's no movement. But when you look at the developed North, when they take money from IMF and the World Bank, when you look at the interest, they are affordable. But the poorer countries are characterized as, or the region, the sub-Sahara, as a risk area to invest. And therefore, even the interests are very, very high.
It's interesting, you know, this is an important strategic meeting. You've got I think you've got around 40 heads of state that are gathered there. And it's not only about what's happening in Paris, France, but it's also about how they can leverage these relationships and these negotiations into other fora like the G20. But let's go again to Cyril Ramaphosa and talk about other people that he's meeting. You don't go there only to deliver, you know, a keynote and take some questions on the platform. You go there for strategic purposes. Very quickly, so if you just share with us.
Strategic purposes, particularly on the backdrop of Africa trying to mediate or assist Ukraine and Russia to find one another. I mean, he's having a bilateral this afternoon and later today with President Macron. And Macron being part of the NATO, Europe, and the big alliance with America, this is an opportunity to give him a feedback, but also lobby him to support the African mission. He's going to have a meeting again with the Brazilian President Lula. This will be the first time they meet since he was elected, ahead of the BRICS summit in South Africa. I think he's going to take an opportunity to tell him about their visit in Kyiv and also in St. Petersburg, but also the thorny issue of Putin.
And that is always going to be, and we'll see what happens in August when the BRICS summit kicks off in South Africa. Sophie Mokoena, our international news editor, just sharing with us the latest coming out of those talks currently underway in Paris, France.